IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is probably the most important legislation with regards to students and individuals with disabilities within our school systems. And it was developed from all of those historical phenomena and historical instances and people who are working towards the advocacy for individuals with special needs. And it arose out of that. It again is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it was written in 1990, it was amended in 97, and it was amended again in 2004. This week's assignment will be related to IDEA developments in 2004. There were 6 main principles of IDEA. One was that everybody was eligible who met the guidelines. So it was a zero reject. If you had an intellectual disability, intellectual cognitive difference, if you had any educational differences, then you would be able to be provided services. You were protected in evaluation in that you were able to be evaluated on a regular basis to decide whether or not special education services were appropriate. You are provided a FAPE, a free and appropriate public education, and that doesn't necessarily mean in public schools. You have the LRE, the least restrictive environment, in that students should be provided an education with the mainstream, with their quote-unquote non-disabled peers and students to the maximum extent appropriate. There were procedural safeguards in the sense that we needed to make sure that certain procedures were followed that were provided by IDEA. Law needed to be followed. And in this law, it also very much focused on parental participation in their child's education and services that they were receiving. IDEA amendments of 1997, the underlying theme was to improve the effectiveness of special education by requiring demonstrable, or however you like to say it, improvements in the educational achievement of students with disabilities. They needed to see results. 1997 was all about results. The goal of IDEA 97 was to move to the next step in providing special education, to improve and increase educational achievement of students with disabilities. So if you think back to it, remember first it was access, and then we were talking about quality. Now we're talking about the quality of services provided to individuals with educational differences. All right. During President Bush's time, he revitalized the idea of examining special education for the children and families, and he had a special commission focused on quality in special education. Major findings of this survey was that process and compliance are often placed above results. That means people were worried about law as opposed to worried about whether or not what we were doing for students was providing them the best education. We were sort of working within this wait to fail model. Instead of being creative, instead of being effective, instead of being impactful, we were just making sure we were avoiding failing. We did not have scientifically based approaches, and we did not have results, or we did not have data to back up what we were doing. And again, this culture of compliance, that you need to follow the law, is more important to follow the law than it is to provide the services appropriate and most effective for education of that child. And there was a sort of look into whether or not we were identifying children with disabilities or whether or not some children were being misidentified, and we brought that up earlier in this class. And the current system does not always embrace evidence-based practices. It was just that there was not a lot of data collection methods for individuals with disabilities and their education. So the major recommendations will be covered in part 2.